I get it, you're standing in the aisle, staring at a subwoofer that promises powerful bass for big spaces, and you're wondering if you really need to fork over a few $100s for something you might never hear in your own living room. You've probably already tried that cheap 8-inch box from a big box store and it sounded like a wobble instead of a rumble. Or maybe you've watched a movie night with friends and the explosions felt more like a tap on the shoulder than a gut punch. Those little doubts are what make the decision feel risky, especially when you're trying to get the most bang for your buck without over-engineering your setup. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Polk Audio Signature Elite ES12 is a 12-inch, front-firing, powered subwoofer that leans on a mineral-filled polymer cone and a 300-watt Class D amp. That sounds like a lot of jargon, but in plain English it means you've got a driver that can move more air than the average home sub, and an amplifier that's built to stay cool while delivering consistent punch. The real question is how that translates when you plug it in, point it towards your couch, and start watching your favorite action flick or listening to a bass-heavy album. First, let's talk about the room size. Polk markets this sub as elevating the largest home theater and music system, and that's not an empty claim. If you have a dedicated home theater room that's 15 feet wide or more, or an open-plan living area where the sound has to travel a bit, the ES12's long-throw 12-inch woofer really shines. In my own testing, placed a couple of feet away from a wall, the low frequencies filled the space without the booming that makes a smaller sub feel like it's fighting the room's dimensions. You'll hear a clean, deep thump when an on-screen explosion hits, and the bass will linger just enough to feel immersive without muddying dialogue. Now, if you're living in a studio apartment or a small bedroom, the extra output can feel a bit much. The ES12's front-firing design means the bass projects directly out of the grill, so you'll get a noticeable vibration on the floor. In tight spaces that can translate into rattling picture frames or shaking windows, which some folks find annoying. For a modest setup, say a 40-inch TV and a soundbar, there are smaller, less aggressive subs that will still give you a satisfying low end without turning your walls into a drum. One of the features that sets this sub apart is Polk's time-smart phase control. In simple terms, it lets you align the sub's output with the main speakers so the waves add together instead of canceling each other out. You'll notice the difference when you switch between the 0 and 180 settings while playing a test tone. One setting will make the bass feel tight and controlled, the other can make it sound boomy or even disappear if the phase is wrong. Most users find the default auto works fine, but the ability to tweak it is a lifesaver if you're integrating the sub into a complex multi-speaker layout, like a 5.1 system with speakers mounted on opposite walls. The cabinet construction is worth a mention, too. Polk uses a rigid, ported box reinforced with a thick layer of internal bracing, which reduces unwanted resonance. In practice, that means the sub's sound stays focused on the low frequencies you want rather than adding a metallic echo that can color the music. It also helps the unit stay stable on a bookshelf or stand. The weight is enough that it doesn't wobble when the bass kicks in, something I've seen with lighter competitors that tip over with a single bass hit. Let's get into the practical side of connecting this thing. The ES12 comes with a single high-level, speaker-level, input and a line-level RCA input. If your AV receiver already has a dedicated sub-out, you'll likely use the RCA for a clean, direct connection. If not, you can feed the sub from the speaker terminals. Just make sure you follow the polarity markings. The wiring isn't overly complicated, but it does mean you need a bit of patience if you're not used to dealing with speaker wire. Once it's hooked up, the onboard crossover is set at 80 Hz by default, which works well for most home theater systems. You can dial it lower if you're pairing the sub with very small satellite speakers that can already handle a bit of low end. One downside that's hard to ignore is the lack of a dedicated Bluetooth or Wi-Fi control app. Many modern subs now let you fine-tune volume, phase, and crossover from your phone, but Polk keeps the control knobs on the back panel. That's not a deal-breaker if you're comfortable with a remote or the AV receiver's sub-level control, but it does add a tiny step of inconvenience if you like to tweak things on the fly while watching a movie. Another practical point is power consumption. The 300-watt Class D amp,